Hello internet users, and welcome back to another video. Once again, we're going to be taking a Pokemon save file and turning it into something incredibly horrifying. By using a game's mechanics in unexpected ways, we can create situations where it becomes almost unplayable, nearly forcing the player to delete everything and start over. Pokemon in particular is a series that can have several of these softlock situations, many of which I've previously covered on this channel, also showing how you can escape under even more ridiculous circumstances. Despite the developers' best efforts, when you have a game with hundreds of creatures, moves, items, and abilities, you can easily overlook how some of these can cause problems when they interact with each other in certain ways. Today, I'm going to be showing you all another example of one of these softlocks, with two slightly different setups. So settle in and get ready for one of the most evil things you can do to a Pokemon game. To start, the game we will be doing this on is Pokemon Emerald version. When it comes to the Generation 3 games, they've become pretty infamous for having a lot of potential for creative softlocks. The most infamous of these oversights is the very existence of a little place called Pacifilog Town. It's small, completely surrounded by the ocean, and has no shop. With a few simple steps, a player can easily make it so that they're stuck here, and it's impossible to leave or even continue playing. If this is your first time seeing one of these videos, I've used this town quite a bit before. However, I've never done something that actually involves escaping the town itself. Pacifilog mostly just ends up being the bad ending if the player gives up. So with that in mind, this episode will be about creating and showing off that ridiculous escape. Here's how I intend to do that. For the first step, I'm going to need to make sure this Emerald save file has been played through up to Pacifilog Town, while making sure to prepare some things along the way. This information is probably going to seem really random, but bear with me, as it'll all make sense soon. First of all, during the initial playthrough, I'm going to need to avoid picking up as many HMs as possible. The game will, at some points, force me to pick up Surf and Fly during cutscenes, but this won't matter at all. The important thing is that I avoid taking any of the others like Strength and Rock Smash. You might ask how it's even possible to avoid these items when the moves are required for progress. Technically, you don't actually need the HM itself. You're good as long as you can just trade over a Pokemon that already has the required move taught to them. As long as you've got the needed badge and move, the game doesn't really care if you've never talked to people like the Rock Smash dude in Mauville. So by doing this, we can keep these key items out of the inventory as the game is played. For the second step, I'll need to make sure I only pick up the Old Rod in Dewford and completely ignore the Good and Super Rods later in the game. Next, I'm going to make sure I have a level 5 shiny Begone that knows the moves Double Team, Attract, Focus Energy, and Roar. As well, all of these moves have had their PP maxed out. And finally, right before we set things in motion, at Pacifilog Town, we'll need to talk to this man and receive the TMs for Frustration and Return. With these seemingly random preparations taken care of, we next need to set up the actual lock at Pacifilog itself. Here's how this is done. During the game, I've mainly used the starter and two other Pokemon that know all of the HM moves. With the party as it is now, I'll head to Pacifilog and use the Pokemon Center. This will mark the town as the location I'll be sent to in the case of a defeat. From there, I'll then fly to Mauville and head over to the nearby daycare. Here, I'll enter and give my two HM users to the old woman. The reason we do this is because in Gen 3, the game won't let you release your last users of an HM move. By putting these Pokemon in the daycare instead, we can still remove them from the party. Once this is done, we get to my favorite part. Using the PC inside the daycare, we'll then be releasing the beloved starter who carried us so far into the game. This will leave us with only the Begone, with no other Pokemon in the PC. Next, we'll walk outside and go into the nearby tall grass. After encountering a Pokemon we will intentionally lose, sending our character all the way back to Pacifilog Town. Following this, the next step is to open the inventory and throw away every item we possibly can. When this is done, there shouldn't be anything left, except a couple key items in the HMs. And now, with everything done, we'll save the game, completing the nightmare. If you've been following along up to this point, you should understand how dire this situation is. Because Begone is our only Pokemon, we have no way of leaving the town. Even though we still have the HMs for Surf and Fly, the little dragon is unable to learn them. In addition to that, because there's no shop in this town, it's impossible to buy Pokeballs to catch anything else. I'm going to emphasize this point by putting a map of the town on screen, because I still get regular comments asking why I just don't go to the shop this town doesn't have. Now that that's covered, you should now be able to see why this save is now almost unplayable. If you were to hand the cartridge over to someone and told them to escape, they'd be in for a surprise, seeing that they can barely do a thing except walk around a few houses now. However, there is still technically 2 things that the player can do to escape. Let's go over what those are. The first is the complicated method. While Begone is unable to fly, as you may have guessed because of the thumbnail, its evolution, Salamence, can. So logically, if you want to leave this town, all you have to do is train Begone until it evolves to Shelgon at level 30, and then to level 50 when it becomes Salamence. So the question becomes, how do we train Begone under these circumstances? If you recall, this Pokemon was set up with 4 specific moves with their PP maxed out. All of these are virtually useless and are unable to cause damage. This means that if you wanted to use the Old Rod to find Magikarp encounters, you would be forced to sit there wasting its moves away until it could use Struggle. In total, it will need to go through 128 turns to make that happen, which is a very time-consuming endeavor. You also need to keep in mind that every time Roar is used, it will force the encounter to end, costing you more time as you'll have to fish for another Pokemon. And even worse, Magikarp isn't the only Pokemon that can be fished up with the Old Rod in this game. If a Tentacool appears, it'll always outspeed the level 5 Dragon and damage it. Because Struggle causes recoil damage, you absolutely do not want it taking damage while you're trying to deplete its PP. Sure, you could heal it at the Pokemon Center, but this will just also replenish all of its PP, making it all for nothing. Because Tentacool cannot be reliably escaped from, this will also force the player to save the game between encounters, so they can quickly reset if Tentacool appears instead of Magikarp. This will of course cost more time. Now at this point, some of you might be asking, can't we just teach Begone an attacking move? The answer to that is yes and no. First off, with how the save file was set up, we don't have any TMs or HMs that Begone can learn. It is actually capable of learning moves like Cut, Strength, and Rock Smash, which is why I intentionally worked around picking them up. As well, the NPC that gives the Frustration and Return TMs will eventually give another one, but only after a week of real time passes. And even then, he only hands out more TMs if the Pokemon in your party have either really high or really low friendship. For this to happen, you'll have to be in and out of encounters anyway, so it'll be an enormous amount of time added onto the escape, no matter how you look at it. Aside from those TMs, the only other way for Begone to have an attacking move is to reach level 17, where it'll learn Headbutt. As I'm sure you can imagine, reaching that level when you can only KO with Struggle will definitely take a while. Speaking of which, exactly how much experience do you think you can even get with this method? Since Struggle causes recoil damage, you're only getting a few Magikarp knockouts before Begone faints, and you're back in front of the Pokemon Center with all 128 move PP again. I tested this myself, and it took 53 minutes of constant encounters until I was able to finally get experience with Struggle, and after all of that, I didn't even get to level 6. So just imagine, if it takes almost an hour to make that little progress before it resets, how long do you think it'll take to learn Headbutt? Of course, having an attack move will make getting to Salamence much faster when it happens, but that doesn't change the fact that you'll only have low-level Pokemon to fight the entire time. Obviously, there is a ton of RNG involved in leveling up Begone this way, but I think it's pretty clear that escaping this way will take a long time. I'd even say that it's a pretty safe bet that you could beat the entire game start to finish multiple times before Begone even gets close to becoming a Shelgon. And this right here is the chaos of this lock. It's 100% possible to escape, but it's so time-consuming and boring that you might as well just give up the shiny and start a new game. Before I end this video though, there still is one more escape method I need to talk about. You may remember at the beginning I mentioned that there can be 2 slightly different setups to this. Depending on what you prefer, it's possible to either include or remove the second escape option when you set this up. What is the second escape, you might be wondering? Well, in Pacifilog, only in Pokemon Emerald version, there's an NPC that wants to trade his Horsey for a Begone. If you were to do this, you'd immediately gain access to a Pokemon that can surf and escape the town. The downside to this is that you have to give away a shiny in order to get it. And before you ask, no, it isn't possible for this Horsey to be shiny. The game simply does not let that happen. This deal is always going to make you feel bad. But like I said, you could always just do the trade beforehand when setting this up, so this option's not even available. And that about covers everything I wanted to talk about for this video. As you can see, escaping from Pacifilog is not a very fun experience. Because Begone cannot fight without struggle, you'll have to spend an incredibly long time fishing and wasting moves just for a tiny amount of experience. But all of that would have to be done so it can finally become a dragon that can fly away. It's actually pretty fitting, considering that Begone's Pokédex entries talk about how it desperately wants to fly. So the question now is, would you be willing to help make its dreams come true? Or would you just give up and give it away? My name's Pacasbury, and thanks for watching.